Hi guys, so as you probably can tell by the title of this video, this was something that was highly requested over on my Instagram and that I've been putting off doing for a really long time. I don't think I've ever told my story to anybody from start to finish, so the only people who know are the people who have experienced it within my life. I also think it's really hard to remember everything. It's been a really long time. And I tend to ramble on video more than I ramble when I write, so I like to write things down. But I'm hoping that this is going to be helpful to some of you, to anyone that feels really alone or who feels like there will never be a way out. Please know that I have been there. I truly believed that I would never be okay. And maybe you're like, yeah, but I'm different, or yeah, but you don't know how I feel. Maybe I don't know how exactly you feel, but I know the feeling. And it's possible. Recovery is possible, but I need you to believe it. So I'm going to start by sharing almost like a timeline of my story, and then I thought I would finish with some of the things that I feel have been most helpful over the past year that have made the biggest differences. Maybe in the past couple of years. It's been the past couple of years I feel like the biggest shifts have come. And then maybe the past 6 months has just been because of lockdown and everything, was everything. But yeah, we'll talk about it. I'm not going to share pictures. I know that a lot of people pair their story with pictures, but I actually think that can be quite triggering and can cause people to start comparing. So oh, I'm not that thin, or oh, I'm thinner. And I don't know, I just don't think it's helpful, and so I'm not going to share photographs. If it makes this video really boring, then please by all means do something else as you listen, or see it more as a podcast, but I just don't think it's helpful. So I'm just going to talk like we're having a conversation. Okay, let's jump in. So my eating disorder came on slowly. It wasn't something that I just decided. I feel like it's probably quite common. I just wanted to lose a little bit of weight. I'm a triplet, and I also have a younger sister who's only 18 months younger than us. So we're all the same age, and they were all smaller than me. I just went through puberty earlier. Literally, that's it. And I didn't like it. I didn't like being bigger than them. I wanted to be the same size as them. I felt big. I wasn't. I was 13, but I just didn't feel the same as everyone else. And the popular girls at school and all the girls on the television, because bearing in mind we didn't have social media back then, and in magazines, they were all tiny, and I wanted to be like them. And so it just started with oh, I'm just going to be a bit healthier, and I'm going to stop snacking so much, because I was a big fan of cereal bars and I ate a lot of chocolate. Sometimes we'd go to the corner shop before school, straight after breakfast, and get chocolate, and I'm allergic, but I used to just go with it. So I was just going to be a bit healthier. And I weighed myself, and I started weighing myself, but then slowly it spiraled, and I got this kind of hit, this real sense of satisfaction when I would weigh myself and I would see it go down. And slowly I realized that if I ate less and less and less, my weight would go down quicker and quicker and quicker. So I lost quite a lot of weight quite quickly. Everyone got a bit worried, and I would just kind of poo-poo it and be like, oh, it's nothing. But I knew there was something wrong. I knew that I was out of control. I knew it wasn't good. And we went to the doctors, and I got diagnosed with anorexia, and my sister and I laughed because she came with me, and we thought it was funny. Little did we know. Little did we know. Anyway. So then I started going to see from the ages of about 14, 15 till I was about 19. You're only supposed to go until you're 18, but they let me stay on an extra year. I went to child mental health services, and I saw them weekly, and I would be weighed and have talking therapy. And I had a meal plan that I would follow, and I've always been a really good girl, so I did follow the meal plan. Sometimes I'd try and cut corners when I could. In fact, I always tried to cut corners when I could. I'd follow the meal plan as best as I could, but if I could cut off a little bit here and a little bit there, I would. And I think that's probably part of the reason why I stayed in my eating disorder, despite eating the amount that I was eating, and despite kind of coming back to weight restored. because I was never truly free, and I never was like allowed myself just to kind of embrace recovery. I was always fighting against it, if that makes sense. And I think that was a really big problem. And so being weighed weekly also was really unhelpful. That would dictate the whole family's vibe for the whole of the week. Like, if I lost weight, it would just be a complete nightmare. And that could have just been because I went for a wee. Like, we didn't know a lot back then. We just went by what the doctor said. And so it did feel like this really big deal if I lost like 0.2 of a kilo, which is like literally nothing. That was that kind of stage. And then I left. And the problem is, when you've been following a meal plan for the best part of 5 years, you don't know how to eat. You don't know how, like, what the hell do I have for breakfast when I'm not following a meal plan? So I spiraled very quickly downward. And again, like I said, I never was really truly free. I never was like embracing this kind of recovery lifestyle. And so when I had a little bit more control, when I went to college and my sisters went off to university and I was free, like without them watching me, I spiraled. And at the time I had a boyfriend, and I'd go around to his house and I'd tell his parents that I'd already eaten, and I would tell mine that I'd already eaten, and it was just a bit of a nightmare, to be honest. Which spiraled even further when I went to university. So when I went to uni, I thought it was going to be this new me. Like, no one here knows I've got an eating disorder. No one here knows, so I can be whoever I want to be. And it started off so positive. It really did. I was meeting all these new people. I was really excited about being in a new place, but you know, you're in a new place with loads of new people, and it's scary, and you're on this new course, and I didn't know how to cook still. Nothing had changed. And even worse, I wasn't living at home. And so I spiraled even more. And that first year of uni was a really hard time. I was like a walking zombie for like the whole of it. And my friends were so kind. Like, God, I'm so lucky to have them as friends still. They like contacted my sister and like told her. Anyway, I'm getting upset. But it was almost like that tick was still there, you know, like it still felt like achieving something to lose weight. At the start of my second year of university, I was diagnosed with osteoporosis, which is brittle bone disease, which basically means that your body has been in such a low state of energy that it's no longer like building up your bones, and it's like breaking them down instead. It usually happens with the elderly, so over time, I guess, and also like the elderly often have problems with eating enough and moving enough, and that kind of impact can build bone, and so without that you lose bone. But I was still moving a lot, and it was a pivotal point. It was a pivotal point for sure, and I vowed things were going to change, and things did change. At the same time, Instagram had just become a thing, but I mean, like, the very starts of Instagram, you know, no one was selling anything. It was very much about sharing, and I found this sense of community, that I realised that there were other people who had eating disorders, and I saw that other people were dealing with it in different ways than I was. And I also, alongside that, found the online sort of like healthy eating community, and to be honest, it changed my life. And I mean this in a good way. Like, I know people demonize clean eating a lot, and I realize that it can be a negative thing, but this was really positive for me. It changed my life. I went from being someone that didn't want to eat anything, as I said, like that hit from eating as little as possible, to being someone that realised I could nourish my body and look after myself, and it didn't have to be scary, and it could be exciting. So I really threw myself. I had a little healthy eating Instagram, which actually still exists out there in the World Wide Web, but, well, anyway. And I got really into it, and I really, really loved it, and I started doing a little bit of weightlifting at the gym, and it was like really, really, really minor, but it was the thing. And I started looking after myself, and I genuinely felt better. But then slowly, over the next sort of couple of years, it did become a little bit toxic. Now I think that we're actually in a better position, and we have people who, it's almost a little bit more like people police each other, and there's definitely more notable people and people who have a lot more knowledge on the online world. And so because of that, you know, the same sort of, I don't want to use the word lies, because it wasn't lies, it was just like I don't know, the same sort of beliefs weren't going around. It was kind of like my eating disorder started. Like I started off in this really small way and it slowly snowballed, and it was very similar with that healthy eating. It was really positive at the start and it kind of started to snowball. So post-university, I was in a okay place. This to me was my sort of quasi-recovery years. My mum knew I wasn't fine. And so I did go and see a therapist down in Surrey. And the biggest thing I have to thank her for is that she introduced me to yoga. And over the next couple of years, like I did my teacher training and then I started teaching. I was living at home with my mum and dad, although they weren't there that often because my dad worked in Australia, so they would travel there an awful lot. And we'd get to go to sometimes, and that was really fun because it really fueled my excitement for the healthy eating side of food, because over there they're just so active and it's so sunny and it's so smoothie. But it was a definite like quasi-recovery time. So I actually wrote a blog post about quasi-recovery a little while ago, and this to me kind of encompasses this part of my life, this next kind of couple of years where I was fine but not really fine. I've shied away from talking about recovery for a long time because I'm fine. I'm recovered, right? 11 years on from when this all started, and I'm not sure my feelings are valid. I mean, I eat when I once didn't. I'm not so underweight that I'll drop dead, and I've even had a couple of periods to show for my increase in physical health. Having an eating disorder has become an accepted part of me and my day, almost like brushing my teeth. It's just who I am and what I think about. I can function pretty well with it. I'm an expert at plastering on a smile, and my bubbly personality sees me just about through anything. I'm able to go to work, I can attend most social occasions, I can eat out, so what's the problem? Well, a few things. Presence for one. Sometimes it feels like I'm not there. Almost like the past decade I've been on automatic, going through the motions. I zone out, I can't connect, I'm on a different frequency. And then I kind of talk about the Minnesota starvation diet, experiment, which I'll link down below because it's really interesting. Basically, it's talking about how a small amount of restriction can cause preoccupation with food, which makes everything else become sort of like noise in the background. And that was definitely how I felt at that time. I was like dead inside. You know, I don't know, I mean, maybe if you had an eating disorder, I know you know what I mean. I was living, like I was surviving, but I was not there in my brain. Like I was so preoccupied by food, I'd completely lost myself. Nicola Hobbs, who I'll talk about later because she literally changed my life, is often calls it a cozy little hell. Like it's known, it's safe, but God, it's awful. It's killing you, literally. That kind of ends that section of my life, and we're going to come to more positive things. So in 2017, I started working with a amazing woman called Nicola Hobbs. I actually found her through a personal trainer nutritionist duo that didn't go very well for me. They told me I needed to lose 4 pounds, and that literally was the worst thing. But they introduced me to Nicola, and so if everything's meant to be, genuinely, she's changed my life. And I started working with her on a very small basis. I would talk to her every now and then, almost like once every 3 months. It was just like she was helping me. She sent me a copy of her book before it was even released, which again I'm going to put down below because it's life-changing. Around the same time, I also found the work of Brené Brown. Again, I'm going to link that below. I listened to The Power of Vulnerability on Audible. It was life-changing. It made me realise like about self-compassion and about being myself, and I didn't have to pretend all the time, and that felt really important. And I also started going out with Gareth, and for the first time in a long time I felt like I got this glimpse of what life was like without an eating disorder. There was this one night that I will never forget, and I remember telling Nicola about it because we just had a conversation. Probs listen to Brené Brown on the way, dead serious. I just finished teaching yoga, and you'll know that if you've had an eating disorder before, that your life literally revolves around food, as in like it's the most important part of the whole day and everything else is like background noise. And so normally after I teach yoga on an evening, which often felt like torture anyway, I would just go straight home for food, and I'd have like my dinner with my parents or on my own if I was on my own, and dessert, and that would be so important to me. And then Gareth texted me and was like, do you want to go skateboarding tonight? Longboarding. And it was summer and it was warm and it was sunny outside, and I met him at 8 o'clock at night, straight after yoga, so I didn't have time for dinner. I think I brought a snack with me in the car instead. We went skateboarding for hours. And then I got home at like 10:30, 11 o'clock at night, and I had my tea. And it wasn't a big deal. He was the most important thing, and our fun was the most important thing, and living was the most important thing, not food. And it was one of the best nights of my entire life. And could you imagine if I'd chosen food instead? So that was a really nice glimpse. So 2017 to present day, I knew I needed a little bit more help at the end of 2017. And so Nicola and I started working with each other full time at the start of 2018. So I spoke with her once a week, and have done up until fairly recently, where we've reduced the amount of sessions because I just don't really need them anymore, which is insanely amazing, and I can't even believe that I can say that out loud. But the way that we approach things completely changed. So previously, I always felt it was about weight and food and why I couldn't eat. I don't know, like it was about my weight, and it was about the food. But what Nicola did was more about, why do you feel that you need to be small? And exploring that part. And so although we did talk about food and we had a framework, because like I said, in the Minnesota starvation diet, like you can't be in a deficit and recover. So I needed to eat enough, I needed to gain some weight. But then we also explored self-care and self-kindness and meditation and journaling and self-awareness as things that were just as important. And to be honest, it's just been up from there. I have had an awful lot of unlearning to do. And like I said, that comes from self-awareness. The self-care plays into it, because if you don't do the self-care, then you haven't got the capacity to do it, the work. That you need that stuff that in you that to feel full so you can do the work. So talking about the things I feel have made the biggest changes, there's a number of them. So one of them is the idea of all in. So I know that like Stephanie Buttermore, if you don't know who she is, you should really go watch her YouTube. If you're on YouTube and you don't know who she is and you're watching this, so I don't know. Stephanie Buttermore, so actually there's a theory that kind of comes before that. She mentions it herself. In the eating disorder community, it's known as the mini Maud theory. Basically, it's the idea that your body has been so deprived for so long that you have a lot of repair to do. There's an incredible website, and I'll tag it down below, and just go and read it, because it's really, really helpful as far as the like physiological stuff is concerned. It makes a really big difference. For me, all in meant that I'd been peeling off the band-aid for a really long time. Slowly trying to recover, because that's what felt safe. And I know a lot of you feel the same. But eventually, you don't have to rip the band-aid off, but eventually you do have to take it off. It can't just stay on forever. And all in was that for me. It was, I'd done all of this work, all this self-awareness, all the reading, but eventually you just gotta jump in. And it was hard. God, it was hard. Sometimes it still is hard. One thing I find really helpful is to remember that recovery is an action. Recovery is a doing word. See it as a doing word. It is not an end place that you'll never reach. It's the way that you act right now. And so you're always in control of that. You always have the power over that. And maybe you gain weight. Maybe you don't gain weight. And I know it's always like, but I want to recover, but I don't want to gain weight. Like, that's why we ask so many people for help, right? Like, I want to recover, but I need you to tell me how to do it without gaining weight. But we can't guarantee that. Like, we can't guarantee anything in life, which is half of the problem with eating disorders. Like, they give you this sense of that you can just control this tiny little slither until it is your whole life, and then you're controlling your whole life and you're fine. But what a shitty experience. I don't want that. And I'm assuming if you're watching this video, you don't want it either. And so when it comes to dealing with the hard days, there's a few things that I like to remember. Put your blinkers on. But you're living your life and you are doing your thing. And you know, you don't want to go around in circles forever. So put your blinkers on and remind yourself, I literally say it to myself, blinkers on. I remind myself of it all the time, because this is the life I want. And I know that being thin doesn't bring me the life that I want. It's never enough. I'm never thin enough. No matter how little I eat, it will never be enough. And so I don't want that life anymore. Once you've dipped your toe in and you can feel it, you'll understand what I mean. So you have to just trust me that it happens. The other thing that I like to say to myself is that I'm just trying it. I'm just trying it on. I'm just trying on for size. You put your blinkers on and you try, and you give yourself, I don't know, give yourself 6 months. And if after 6 months it's really that bad and you tried really, really hard and you probably went all in, I don't mean like half-hearted, I mean like you did it, and you still feel that it's not worth it, you can always go back. But you probably won't want to. But if you don't try, you'll never know. The other thing to remember is that recovery and self-love are not the same thing. So what I mean by that is, just because you have bad body days doesn't mean that your eating disorder, you're relapsing. It just means you're having a bad body day. And if you're used to being tiny, like we can look at like bodybuilders, like they have body dysmorphia because they're used to what they look like when they get up on stage, but they know that that's not healthy. And so they can't live like that. Well, it's kind of the same with an eating disorder. If you've been that small, whenever you're bigger, it feels bigger, and it just takes a lot of time or some time to get used to it. I would also like to say, because I think it's important and I don't think it's spoken about enough, is that recovery is not a magic pill. Chances are your eating disorder was a thing that you used to like, or have used to like cope or manage. And sometimes when you no longer have that, it actually feels harder. But it doesn't mean that you're going backwards, and it doesn't mean that you should go back to having an eating disorder. But be aware that that might happen. Awareness is helpful. I feel like I'm starting to ramble, and I want everything that I say to be helpful, and I'm afraid that I'm starting to ramble into like not being helpful anymore. So there's a few things that I want to say. Recovery is worth it, and it is possible. Your body is the least interesting thing about you, but you have to stop acting and believing on that in order for that to be true, in order for you to be able to see that. And finally, this is a bumpy road, and it takes time, but keep going. So I just wanted to end with the words of John Green. I've quoted him before. I love this quote. It's my favourite thing. He talks about how falling in love happens like falling asleep, slowly and then all at once. I think recovery is like that. I hope that was helpful. I'm sorry if it was a ramble. One day I hope to get it all down in like a book or something, because I have so many thoughts on it, but sometimes when you're just talking it's hard to kind of like grab everything. If there's anything that you want me to talk about, or if you liked it, please let me know. I'm sending you all my love.